Yes, Mr. Pretorius.
Mr. Chair, as stated earlier this week, Advocate McQuena will give a brief opening in relation to the evidence that we intend to lead, at least for the present, in relation to terms of reference 1.1 to 1.3, and that will be followed by the evidence of Mr. Jonas.
Thank you. Mr. McQuena.
Chairperson, in order to place this session of the proceedings in its proper context and for a sensible treatment of the issues to be canvassed during this phase, we deemed it necessary and prudent to outline a road map for this session. We will be ventilating and canvassing the issues neatly captured in the Commission's terms of reference 1.1, 1.2, and 1.3. Mr. Chair, yourself and Mr. Pretorius, in the most able manner, did traverse these terms of reference during your opening address. With your leave, Mr. Chair, may we remind ourselves of the content, ambit, and the scope of those terms of reference, and I do so by referring the chairperson to the terms of reference. Starting with the term of reference 1.1, the Commission is called upon to inquire whether and to what extent and by whom attempts were made through any form of inducement or for any gain of whatsoever nature to influence members of the National Executive, including deputy ministers, office bearers, and or functionaries employed by or office bearers of any state institution or organ of state or directors of the boards of SOEs. In particular, the Commission must investigate the veracity of allegations that former Deputy Minister of Finance, Mr. Mcebisi Jonas, and Ms. Mentor were offered cabinet positions by the Gupta family. And 1.2, whether the president, that is now the ex-president, had any role in the alleged offers of cabinet positions to Mr. Mcebisi Jonas and Ms. Mentor by the Gupta family as alleged. And term of reference 1.3, whether the appointment of any member of the National Executive, functionary, and or office bearer was disclosed to the Gupta family or any other unauthorized person before such appointments were formally made and or announced, and if so, whether the president or any member of the National Executive is responsible for such conduct. Mr. Chair, however, for the purpose of this session, we will be focusing and dedicating our attention to the following aspects of the terms of reference. We will interrogate and canvass the first portion of the term of reference 1.1 in as far as it relates to that conduct of inducement and influence pertaining to National Executive and deputy ministers. And as far as it relates, and then we will also include in this session reference to deal and investigate the veracity of the allegations that the former Deputy Minister of Finance, Mr. Mcebisi Jonas, and Ms. Mentor were offered cabinet positions by the Gupta family. And then also we'll be dealing with term of reference 1.2 in its entirety. When it comes to term of reference 1.3, we will also be focusing mainly on those appointment or removals of the National Executive, and those, Mr. Chair, in as far as the terms of reference pertains to office bearers and or functionaries and or the boards of the SOEs, that term of reference in its nature is very broad. Documents are still being collated and the investigations are still ongoing. In essence, Mr. Chair, that aspect of the term of reference will receive and be addressed not in this session or phase, but it will be given the attention in due course. Mr. Chair, in order to proper lay foundation to the evidence which will be adduced during the session by the witnesses which are called forward by the Commission, with your leave, we seek to briefly deal with an interpretation issue which has a direct relevance to the testimony of the witnesses we intend calling. We know, Mr. Chair, what the terms of reference 1.1, 1.2, and 1.3 expressly provides. What these terms of reference do not expressly provide is whether and or to what extent and by whom attempts were made through any form of inducement or for any gain of whatsoever nature to influence the removal of the National Executive, deputy ministers, office bearers, and or functionaries employed by or office bearers of any state, institution, or organ of state, or directors of the boards of the SOEs. Equally so, Mr. Chair, you'll see that term 1.2 of the terms of reference does not expressly provide for the investigation pertaining to whether the former president had played any role in the removal of any member of government or organ of state or office bearers and or functionary employed by any state institution and or SOE. The question, therefore, Mr. Chairman, is whether terms of reference 1.1 and 1.2 should be interpreted literally, narrowly, and limited only to the investigations pertaining to the unlawful and illegal inducement and influence made in the appointments without properly interrogating the obvious consequences being the removals. It is our view, Mr. Chair, that the allegations in relation to the removal of government officials were directly investigated and dealt with in the report of the public protector. May we refer the chair to the public protector's report, and we find comfort on page 29 with specific reference to paragraph 2.5 under the heading Key Allegations. The public protector recorded the following. It's on page 29, Mr. Chair. Paragraph 2.5. The complaints followed media reports alleging that the Deputy Minister of Finance, Honorable Mr. Mcebisi Jonas, was allegedly offered the post of Minister of Finance by the Gupta family long before his then colleague, Mr. Nhlanhla, was abruptly removed. And we put emphasis therein, Mr. Chair, removed by the Gupta family, which has a long-standing friendship with President Zuma's family and a business partnership with his son, Mr. Duduzane Zuma. The offer took place at the Gupta residence in Saxonwold, city of Joburg, Gauteng. The allegation was that Atul Gupta, the oldest of the three Gupta brothers, who are business partners of President Zuma's son, Mr. Duduzane Zuma, in a company called Oak Bay, among others, offered the position of Minister of Finance to Deputy Minister Jonas, and must have influenced the subsequent removal of Mr. Nene and his replacement with Mr. Des van Rooyen on the 9th of December 2015, who was also abruptly shifted to the corporate governance and traditional affairs portfolio 4 days later following a public outcry. May we also invite the chair to have regard to page 34 of the Public Protector's report in support of our interpretation to the terms of reference that they must include the removals. With particular reference, Mr. Chair, to paragraphs A to C, under the heading Alleged Breach of Executive Member Ethics Act 1998, the following is recorded. A, whether President Zuma improperly and in violation of the Executive Ethics Code allowed members of a Gupta family and his son to be involved in the process of removal and appointment of Minister of Finance in December 2015. B, whether President Zuma, improperly in violation of the Executive Ethics Code, allowed members of the Gupta family and his son to engage or to be involved in the process of removal and appointing of various cabinet ministers. We also emphasize therein the words removal as recorded by the Public Protector. C, whether President Zuma improperly in violation of the Executive Ethics Code allowed members of the Gupta family and his son to be involved in the process of appointing members of the boards of directors of SOE. We submit, Mr. Chair, that the allegation of state capture pertaining to the appointment and removal of government officials were indeed investigated upon by the Public Protector, and they are recorded in various portions of the Public Protector's report.
Mr. Mkwena, until somebody comes up and argues the contrary before me,
yes,
my inclination is that it's logical that the dismissal also needs to be investigated.
yes.
So unless you need to do so for the purposes of completeness in terms of your opening statement, you don't need to persuade me that the dismissal falls within. My prima facie view is that it does. I remain open to anyone who might at any stage want to argue that it doesn't. I will look at that and make the decision at that time. But as of now, I think you can take it that my prima facie view is that it does.
Mr. Chair, we are then comfortable. We don't need to make any further submissions in that regard. We have prepared, Mr. Chair, for ease of reference, a bundle that we will be conversing with Mr. Jonas. With your leave, Mr. Chairperson, we propose that it should be marked Exhibit C1, We further propose that additional documents which will be filed in relation to term reference 1.1, 1.2, and 1.3 should be marked chronologically from C2 until the last number. In that way, Mr. Chair, we will be able to navigate ourselves through documents even at the stage whereby the record becomes voluminous. At least we'll be knowing that in relation to term reference 1.1, 1.2, and 1.3, we will be having that C number specifically allocated to the documents to be filed by different parties in respect of those terms of reference. And I beg leave to formally, I'm told that this has been formally being handed, the bundle simply to be marked C1. That is the bundle, Mr. Chair.
With reference to how other documents that will come under these terms of reference will be marked, of course, as and when they are being handed up, whoever does that will bear in mind what you have just said.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
It will make it easy for all of us to be able to find documents as and when we are required to do so. You will see, Mr. Chair, we have also prepared an index to the bundle, and simply to assist you to navigate through that bundle, from page 1 to 20 is the statement of Mr. Jonas, and item 2, page 21 to 89 is the transcript from the public protector, and then item 3 is a document which was prepared by Mr. Jonas, a timeline which is contained on page 90 to 94, and then item 4 deals with different affidavits which were filed in the matter between the Minister of Finance versus the Oak Bay, where the issues that we're interrogating in this commission were also raised therein. And item 5 is an affidavit of Mr. Jonas in response to the allegations contained in the affidavit filed in the Minister of Finance versus Oak Bay matter. And then Annexure A is a statement that was prepared on his behalf, which he refused to sign by the officials, which will in due course refer to their names of the hawks. And item 7 is the GPRS records, and item 8, Mr. Chair, is the telephone records, which will deal with same to the extent that it becomes necessary. Mr. Chair, we are ready to lead the evidence of Mr. Jonas.
Your bundle, your index talks about items number 1, 2, 3, 4 up to 8. But when I look at how the bundle is divided, I see A, B, C, D, E. I would have thought that your dividers would have 1, 2, 3, 4. So if I want to go to item 5, the divider tells me this is where item 5 is.
We understand.
But am I missing something that I should be
You are
seeing?
not. The file the dividers were put there for ease of reference, not referring to the item themselves, but we take the point that during the assignment, what we'll do, instead of the C numberings, we'll put the item numbers. However, for the purpose of following the evidence of Mr. Jonas, it might be appropriate for us to refer to the page numbering. Then in that regard, Mr. Chair, we won't lose one another.
Okay. Thank you. You may proceed.
Do you have any objection to making the prescribed oath?
None whatsoever.
Do you consider the oath to be binding on your conscience?
Yes, it is.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear that the evidence you shall give today shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do, so help you God.
Thank you.
Mr.
Thank
Chair,
you.
before proceeding with leading the evidence of Mr. Jonas, Mr. Chingrove is here to register his presence. He is part of the legal team of Mr. Jonas.
Thank you.
May I confirm that, Chair?
Thank you, Mr.
My name is
Chair.
Vimtrengo. I appear for Mr. Jonas,
Yes.
instructed by attorneys Bokwana, Burns, and Nortons.
Thank you very much, Mr. Trengov. You may proceed, Mr.
Yes.
Mkwena.
Mr. Jonas, during this phase of the hearings, the Commission will be addressing the terms of reference 1.1, 1.2, and 1.3. And are you aware of that? If you can speak closer to the mic so that you are able to capture your
Yes,
answers.
I am, sir.
Yes.
Before you do so, you proceed, Mr. Mkwena. I see somebody next to Mr. Jonas. I don't know who he is. I don't know what he's doing there.
He might be sitting to wait for cross-examination. Mr. Chair. I'm not sure.
Oh, you also don't know? Well, maybe I should adjourn and you people sort this thing out. I'm going to adjourn for 5 minutes. Thank you, Mr. Mkwena.
Mr. Chair, we did clarify the issue. It was Mr. Jonas's attorney of records. He
Yeah.
was merely sitting there to assist him to navigate through the documents, but he has since now joined the rest of us.
I think he has done the right thing. Thank you. You may proceed.
Mr. Jonas, for your benefit, may I repeat the question that are you aware that for this phase of the inquiry will be interrogating term of reference 1.1, 1.2, and 1.3?
I do.
Yes. And if we have placed the term of reference next to you for your benefit, if you may go to page 5, and that's where you'll find term of reference 1 up until page 6. Towards the middle of the page, that's where you find term of reference 1.3. And are you familiar with those terms of reference?
With all respect, I do, Chair.
Yes. In order to assist this commission, you had provided and furnished us with a witness statement. Mr. Jonas?
I did.
Yes. May I refer you to the bundle C1, a document contained from page 1 to page 20 of the bundle. Are you there?
I'm with you, Chair.
May I refer you to page 20? Is that your signature?
And it is.
Yes. Before confirming your statement under oath, are there any portions of your statement which you wish to correct?
With respect, Chair, there are a couple.
Yes. Could you please take us through those corrections? Slowly, as we want also to make notes.
On page 20, paragraph 5.7,
Paragraph?
5.7,
Yes.
and the subsection 5.7.6.
On which page? Page 19?
19, yeah.
19.
Yes.
Yes. And you are referring to paragraph 57.6.
Yes.
And then which corrections would you wish us to effect?
It says, I was invited at the Hyatt by Hlongwane. That's incorrect. I mean, it reads in the actual statement signed as by Mr. Tutuzani Zuma.
Yes. Is that the only correction on that page?
Yes, it is.
And then the next paragraph?
I'm sorry, Mr. Mkwena and Mr. Jonas. So in paragraph 57.6, what words should we delete and in which line?
In line 1, Chair, with due respect, I was invited to the meeting at the Hyatt by, it says by Mr. Songane. You delete by Mr. Hlongwane and then you say by Mr. Tutuzani.
Oh, okay, I think we should delete Mr. Shongwane and.
Yes.
And then we leave by, so that it says by Mr. Tutuzane Zuma.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. You may proceed.
And then where else?
The
Please.
second one is on paragraph 37 and 38.
On page?
Let me just check the page quickly, sorry. On page 10 of the,
So we say paragraph 37 and 38 on page 10 of your statement.
it is just the order of the paragraph. 38 should be 37 and 37 should be 38,
In order for them to follow chronology.
in order to keep chronology, yes.
Yes. And where else, Mr. Jonas?
That's page 4. Paragraph 14.
Which line?
With respect, Mr. Chair, the last line of that paragraph.
The one starting by with the following: I had received a call from Fana Shongwane.
And the rest should read as Mr. Tutuzani was arriving.
So the words "while I was with" must
Yes.
be deleted,
Yeah.
replaced with the word "as." And then we must add after Mr. Tutuzani Zuma was arriving,
Yes.
before the word "end."
Yeah. I hope the English makes sense. I'm not sure now.
You have captured the essence, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Any other place?
I think that's it.
Other,
Thank you very much.
other than that, you're happy, and you're happy with the rest of your statement.
With all respect, yes, I am.
Yes. Do you confirm the contents of your statement under oath?
Yes, I do.
Yes. Mr. Jonas, I propose.
I'm sorry, Mr. Mkwena, and this may or may not have something to do with the statement by Mr. Jonas that he hoped that the English made sense. The last portion of that line says, and I told him that I was with Mr. Zuma.
Yes.
Now the earlier part is now saying, as Mr. Tutuzani Zuma was arriving. So it may or may not be that it's still fine. I don't know. I'm just making.
It's fine, the way
Okay,
that it's,
all
yes.
right. Thank you.
Mr. Jonas, I propose to lead your evidence by referring to specific topics and themes. I will deal with your evidence by addressing the following topics. The first one, I will ask you.
I'm sorry, Mr. Mokoena. Yeah, I don't know whether it might not be good for the sake of completeness. I think it's implied. For if you are going to lead him on the basis of certain topics, whether he shouldn't at this stage just confirm that other than the corrections that other than the errors that he had picked up, which he has now corrected, he confirms that this statement is correct and he stands by it or something to
Yes,
that effect.
no, he did confirm, Mr. Chair, but
Oh,
for
he did?
completeness, yes, he did
Oh,
confirm
okay,
that
okay.
other than those changes that have been
Yes.
effected, that he
Yes.
does confirm
Okay,
his
okay.
statement under oath.
Thank you. I may have missed that. Thank you.
Yes. Now, the topics which I propose to converse with you are the following, Mr. Jonas. Firstly, I will request you to deal with the events leading up to the meeting of the 23rd of October 2015. And then secondly, we will deal with the events subsequent to the meeting of the 23rd October 2015. Thirdly, we will I will request you to address the period between October 2015 to December 2015. We will then move on to canvass events which took place from January 2016 to March 2016. We will then also deal in detail with your media statement, which was released on the 16th of March 2016. We will then move on to converse with you and highlight your interaction with the officials of the Hawks. Thereafter, I will refer you to the portions of the transcripts of the public protector wherein your interview with the public protector is captured. I will also deal with you with the document that you have prepared, styled the timeline document, and then we will also dedicate some time in dealing with those affidavits which were filed in the matter between the Minister of Finance and Ogbay. You would recall that Mr. Gupta, A.J. Gupta, filed an affidavit in those proceedings in relation to the offer made to you at the Gupta residence, and Mr. Fana Hlongwane, as well as Mr. Tutuzane Zuma, filed confirmatory affidavits in support of that affidavit. But you also filed your own affidavit in order to respond to those allegations. We will, in due course, canvass those affidavits in much more detail. And finally, and to the extent that it becomes necessary, we'll deal with the cell phone records. That's how I propose to deal with your evidence. As a prelude to your evidence, may I request you to turn to page 1 of your witness statement. That is the bundle, Mr. Chair, that I'm referring to, with specific reference to paragraph 2 of your statement, and if you can read same into the record.
Okay. Thank you very much, Chair. I was appointed as the Deputy Minister of Finance of South Africa on the 26th May 2014, and I was relieved of my position of Deputy Minister of Finance on the 31st March 2017. I was also, during this period, a member of the South African Parliament. I was appointed as Deputy Minister at the same time as Mr. Nhlanhla Nene was appointed as a Minister of Finance. On the 9th December 2015, it was announced that Mr. Nene was removed as Minister of Finance and replaced by Mr. Des van Rooyen. It was announced on the 13th December 2015 that Mr. van Rooyen was intended to be replaced by Mr. Pravin as Minister of Finance. Mr. Gordon served as Minister of Finance until the evening of the 31st March 2017, when he was removed as Minister of Finance and I was removed as Deputy Minister of Finance on the same day.
Yes. There are two important aspects arising from that paragraph 2, which would require clarification from you. The first one, could you share with us the circumstances upon which you were appointed on 26 May 2014?
Mr. Chair, I received a call from the Office of the President inviting me to his residence as Mahlaban Ndlovu, and formally informed that I have been appointed as Deputy Minister of Finance. Thank you.
And then the second issue that arises, you are saying in a statement that you were removed as Deputy Minister of Finance the same day when Minister Goran was removed. Can you also share with us the circumstances which led to your removal and how you were removed?
Of course, the removal there was no formality around it from the President. I actually saw it on TV. And probably to date, I never received any formal information about my removal. I suspect the same for Mr. Gordon.
So you say that you only saw it on TV that you were removed?
And then subsequent press media statements.
Yes. Can you then deal or take us through very slowly, take us through the events leading up to the meeting on the 23rd October 2015?
In difference, Mr. Chair, I would try to move closely as what is written in the statement, just to ensure that I capture all the details.
Yes, it's important because there are time references and specifics in that statement.
On approximately the 27th, 28th August 2015, I was in Luanda at an African caucus of finance ministers. I recall being contacted by Mr. Fana Hlongwane, whom I knew relatively well, telling me that Mr. Duduzane Zuma would like to speak to me, to invite me to an awards ceremony, which I'll explain later. I subsequently met Mr. Hlongwane during 2015 in Johannesburg in the presence of Mr. Bongani More, and he told me that Mr. Duduzane Zuma wanted to meet me.
Mr. Jonas, who is Mr. Bongani More?
It's a friend of mine.
Oh, yes.
It was not a formal meeting, it was a casual meeting. During the course of the conversation, he mentioned that the Guptas were important to him. I indicated that I would not want to be associated with the Guptas.
What prompted that discussion? Why would he say to you
It was a general discussion on the politics of the country, and that's how it came in.
Yes.
I asked Mr. Hlongwane to provide me with Mr. Duduzane's number. I have not previously met Mr. Duduzane, nor had any previous interaction with him. At approximately 5:30 p.m. on the 17th October 2015, after arriving in Cape Town from Port Elizabeth, I sent Mr. Duduzane a text stating, "Hi, comrade," I quote, "tried to call you." So this is Jonas. Approximately at 5:36 p.m., I had a short telephone conversation with Mr. Duduzane Zuma. Mr. Duduzane Zuma requested me to attend what I recall to be the South African of the Year Awards hosted by ANN7 on the Saturday, 17th October 2015 in Johannesburg. I ultimately indicated that I would not be able to attend, telling him that my schedule would not permit it. Mr. Duduzane Zuma said that he would like to talk to me nonetheless and ask whether we could meet sometime after the awards.
At that point, did he indicate to you why he wanted to talk to you?
There was no indication, sir.
Okay, yes, President.
On the Monday, 19th October 2015, at approximately 12:38, I sent Mr. Duduzane Zuma a text message which read, "Can we talk when I, in response to a missed call," there was a missed call by Mr. Duduzane, and I responded to him by saying, "Can we talk?" I was about to fly from Johannesburg to Cape Town. I received 2 missed calls from Mr. Hlongwane that evening at approximately 9:37 p.m. and 9:38. At approximately 9:43 p.m., I sent Mr. Duduzane a further text message which stated, "Called." I then received a call from Mr. Duduzane at 9:43 about arranging a meeting, and I indicated to him that I would be in Johannesburg later in the week and that it may be possible to meet then. On the 22nd of October 2015, I flew to Cape Town, from Cape Town to Johannesburg. On landing in Johannesburg, I noticed that I had received a text message from Mr. Duduzane Zuma, which read, "Good morning, sir. I trust you made it out of the Parliament building unscathed. I tried to call you. Please return my call. Kindest regards, Duduzane," unquote. I also saw that I had received a missed call from another missed call from Mr. Zuma.
Mr. Zuma, there, are you referring to Duduzane?
Duduzane.
Yes.
I received a call again from Mr. Duduzane Zuma at approximately 9:58 a.m. on 23rd October. I told him that I would be attending a meeting in Rosebank that morning and that we could meet briefly before I flew to Port Elizabeth in the late afternoon of the 23rd October 2015. We agreed to meet at Hyatt Hotel in Rosebank before I left to the airport. On the 23rd of October 2015, I attended NEDLEC briefly, and after the meeting, and I left the meeting after that. I sent Mr. Duduzane a text message at approximately 11 a.m. to change our agreed upon time, which stated, quote, "Can we make it 1:30, same place," which is Hyatt. He responded with a text saying agreed. I arrived earlier at approximately 1. I sent him a text message stating, "Can you call me?" I then received a short call from Mr. Zuma, Duduzane, at approximately 1:03 p.m. and at 1:13. I sent a further message saying, "Here already." He responded at 1:21 stating by text, "I'm on my way up, sir." When Mr. Duduzane arrived at Hyatt Hotel, we had a brief discussion. He appeared pretty nervous and spoke in very vague terms. He said nothing of substance, except to say that his father, the then President Jacob Zuma, liked me. After a while, I indicated that I was under time pressure. He said that the place was too crowded and that he had important matters to discuss, but that he wanted other people to join the discussion and that he wanted to drive to a more private place, which he said was close by.
But did he tell you who are these other people that he wanted to join the discussion?
With all due respect, he didn't.
He didn't.
I assumed we would be going to an office nearby, so I said, "Let's go." I had received a call from Fana Hlongwane as Duduzane was arriving. That's the correction that I made. We drove in Mr. Duduzane's car, which appeared to be a 2-door Mercedes-Benz. I did not know the surrounding area very well and only gathered when we arrived at our destination that we had driven into the Gupta residence in Saxon World.
Did you know that residence before of the Guptas?
No, I didn't.
Was this the first time that you...
It was the first time, yes. Mr. Duduzane had not suggested to me when we left Hyatt that we were going to the Gupta residence or that we were to meet the Guptas. As Mr. Duduzane passed the car, I noticed that Mr. Fana Hlongwane had also arrived at the Gupta residence. We went into the house, and Mr. Duduzane, Zuma, and Mr. Hlongwane led me into a lounge where we sat down and started chatting. Neither Mr. Duduzane nor Mr. Hlongwane suggested what the meeting would involve. Neither of them suggested that the meeting would involve any of the Gupta members, family members. We had not spoken for a very long time when one of the Gupta brothers walked into the room and sat down. I had not previously met any of the Gupta brothers, but I recognized him as one of the Gupta brothers from media reports. At the time, I did not know his name, as he did not introduce himself, but simply started talking. I have subsequently looked at press articles which depict the various Gupta brothers. Based on these photographs, I'm relatively certain that the Gupta brother at the meeting was Ajay Gupta. But I cannot exclude, based simply on the photograph, the possibility that it might have been Mr. Rajesh Gupta. Mr. Duduzane Zuma and Mr. Fana Hlongwane both remained silent while Mr. Gupta spoke, and they did not participate in the interaction which followed, although they both remained in the room. Mr. Gupta opened the conversation by stating that we know you, and that he had been told that I was being blackmailed by Mr. Hlongwane. I replied that that was not true. He responded by stating that that was not why he had called me. Anyway.
Did Mr. Hlongwane at this stage respond?
No response.
Or reacted to these remarks from Mr. H.
No, he just shook his head anyway. No response really, no words. He said that we have been gathering intelligence on you, including those closest to you, such as my friend Rastam Mohammed and my chief of staff, Nkosi Hlangamboniswa. He described both as being poor and useless. He emphasized that they, which I understood to be the Gupta family, have the capability to gather such information, and that they had gathered a lot of information on me, which they could use against me. He said that as far as he was concerned, this meeting never happened, and that if I were one day to suggest that this meeting had occurred, they would destroy my political career. I understood him to be creating the impression that they had information on me that they would use to destroy my political career if I revealed that the meeting had taken place.
Did you, at that stage, interact with him or say anything to him when he made those remarks?
I listened. He was talking like a radio.
Yes, proceed.
Should I proceed?
Yes, we proceed.
Furthermore, Mr. Gupta said that they were well aware of my activities and that I was working with the ANC General Secretary, Mr. Gwede Mantashe, Treasurer General, Dr. Zweli Mkhize. He also said that these activities were not good for me and these were bad guys. He expressed the view that I was part of what he referred to as a thing within the ANC and government. I can only assume that this was suggesting that I formed part of a faction or a process intended to undermine Gupta, to undermine the then President Zuma. And I must state in this regard that my relationship with President Zuma at the time was pretty good. I interjected and refuted his view and stated that I was nothing more or less than a part of ANC, and that my activities in the ANC and my work in government had nothing to do with anything other than the interest of the country.
Had nothing to do with him?
With him.
Yes.
I asked him directly what was the purpose of the meeting. Mr. Gupta said, the old man, referring to the president, seemed to like me and that they have called me to check me out. I quote that. and to see, I quote again, whether they can work, I can work, and I quote, whether you can work with us. He also said that the president was going to fire Mr. Nene because he could not work with them. I understood, again, this to be a reference to the Gupta family.
At that time, what portfolio was Mr. Nene holding?
Mr. Chair, Mr. Nene was the Minister of Finance. He said that, I
I'm
quote,
sorry, Mr. Mkwena and Mr. Jonas. It might be easier to deal with this here now than much later.
Yes.
In paragraph 20 of Mr. Jonas' statement, where he refers to the ANC Secretary General, Mr. Gupta, from what he has said, it seems to me that it should not be saying Treasurer General and Dr. Mcebisi.
Awesome.
It should be saying Mr. Gupta Mantashe and Treasurer General, Dr. Mcebisi, rather than and.
It makes sense that way, Mr. Chair.
Thank
We
you
have
very much.
effected that correction accordingly.
Thank you.
Mr. Gupta said that the old man, the president was going to fire Mr. Nene because he could not work with them, which I understood to refer a reference to the Gupta family. He said that, I quote, "You must understand that we are in control of everything," unquote. The National Prosecuting Authority, the Hawks, the National Intelligence Agency, and the old man do, and I quote, "will do anything we tell him to do." He said that the old man intended appointing me as the Minister of Finance. I was at this stage shocked and angered by this statement, and I said that I was not interested in becoming a Minister of Finance.
Now, at this stage, where is Mr. Fana Hlongwane and where is Mr. Tutuzani Zuma?
They are in the room quiet, as if they don't exist.
Okay.
Mr. Gupta ignored what I said. He said emphatically that I must become Minister of Finance because that is what we want, the we want. By that, I would have to work with them. He also said that if I worked with them, I would become very rich, and that he could immediately offer me 600 million. He pointed at Mr. Duduzani and said that they had made him a billionaire and that he had bought a house in Dubai. He said that they worked closely with a number of people, including Lynn Brown and Brian Molife. As a result, they were protected. In other words, those people who work with them are protected. He said that Mr. Molife is very safe and that his career path is very clear and that nobody would touch him and I would be safe too.
Now, when you referred to, I just want to make sure that your evidence is accurately captured. When you refer to the offer, is that 600 million that you were offered?
600 million rands.
Yes. In rands?
Yes.
All right. You can proceed from
Before
paragraph
he
24.
proceeds, Mr. Jonas,
600 million.
yes, thank you. That last sentence of paragraph 23, I seem to be hearing you to say touch him and not me. It's written me.
Oh, touch him, yes. Yes.
No, is it supposed to be me or is it supposed to be him?
No, it's me. He said, assuming that I work with them, nobody would touch me and I would be safe.
You may have said him earlier on. You don't know whether I heard correctly.
It might be a slip of tongue.
Okay, all right. Now, I just want to make sure that where what you say might be different from what is written here, you are aware of it and you can explain.
Okay.
You may proceed, Mr. Mkwena.
Thank you very much, Chair. I said that I was going to leave and stood up to leave. I said that I was not interested in being a Minister of Finance, and if he thought I would work with them, he would have to tell me precisely what it is that they do. At that point, Mr. Zuma and Mr. Hlongwane also stood up. I was angry at the stage, and he was also a bit emotional. He was also emotional. He said something along the lines of, I quote, "Look, do you know who we are dealing with?" he was agitated and said, "You think it is illegal?" He said that everything that they do is legal and that they create jobs and contribute to the economy. He said that at the moment, we, which I understood again to be the Gupta family, earn about 6 billion from the fiscus through various entities, including ESCOM, Transnet, and government departments. He said that they wanted to increase this amount to 8 billion, and that they thought I could be helpful in this regard. Mr. Gupta said that they had determined that the National Treasury was a stumbling block for their growth, and that they wanted, I quote again, to clean up Treasury. He said that when I'm appointed as Minister of Finance, I would have to remove the Director General, Lungisa Funzile, Head of Tax and Financial Sector Policy, Mr. Ishmael Momiat, the Deputy Director General, Mr. Andrew Donaldson, and the then Chief of Procurement, Kenneth Brown. Further, he said that they would provide me with replacement of all of these people, and that they would provide me with the necessary support, including advisors.
Before you proceed, Mr. Jonas, I noted that in that paragraph which you have just finished, when you came to, I think, 6 billion rand, you just said 6 billion. And I think when you read 600 million, you also left a rand.
Okay.
I think try as much as possible to read it as is, except if you pick up that it's incorrect, in which case you must just state that on record.
And definitely,
Thank you.
I said that I was under time pressure, and again encouraged him to set out precisely what they do, suggesting that this would allow me to take an informed decision. For the sake of clarity, my question was not intended for the purpose of seriously considering his offer, but it was intended as a provocation to seek to draw him out in the context of the unfolding state capture phenomenon that we were at that point, trying to make sense of and to determine who was involved. And it was, in a sense, trying to flush them out.
Did he answer your question as to what were they doing?
I'm coming to that.
Okay.
I began to walk away, and Mr. Gupta motioned to both Mr. Zuma and Mr. Hlongwane to hang back. And as I was walking to the door of the house, Mr. Gupta directed me to a bar area and said that they were serious about offering me 600 million rand, and that it would be deposited into an account of my choice, and that they could open an account for me. I could stash it in Dubai. He said that to show they were serious, I quote, "I can give you 600,000 rands now and ask," again I quote, "do you have a bag, or can I give you something to put it in?" Unquote. He seemed to want to show the cash to me. I said to him that I did not want money, and I thought he was going to tell me what it is that they do. I said that I was in a rush to catch a plane, but I was returning from the Eastern Cape on Sunday, and he could provide me with a list, and he could provide me with a list of what they do on Tuesday of the following week. And then he told Duduzane to come back, to arrange that I come back the following Tuesday, and that he should tell me to bring a bag. I asked Mr. Zuma to take me back to my car. Mr. Gupta said he wished to continue the meeting with Mr. Zuma, and another car would take me to the airport. At the end of the meeting, Mr. Gupta repeated that they had information on me, and if I suggested that the meeting had occurred, they would kill me.
Can I refer you back to paragraph 28? Now, at that stage, when Mr. Gupta is talking to you, and saying that I can give you 600,000 now. Where was Mr. Tutuzane Zuma and Mr. Hlongwane?
They were standing a bit back away from the scene.
Okay.
I was then driven to the airport by what I assumed to be one of their vehicles, the Gupta
Now,
vehicles.
as we are seeing that they were standing back, could they hear what he was saying?
Indeed, they were very close, so they had.
Now, Mr. Jonas, can we then move on to deal with the events subsequent to the meeting of the 23rd of October 2015? But before you do that, may I inquire from the chair that now that we did begin with our hearing at 9:30, I'm not sure when will be the appropriate time to take a tea adjournment.
Maybe we should take it at 11. Is that convenient to everybody?
It will be.
It will be. Okay, all right. We'll take it at 11 then.
You may proceed, Mr. Jonas, to deal with the events subsequent to the meeting of the 23rd October 2015.
I was very shaken by what happened at the meeting due to the sensitive and threatening nature of what had transpired at this meeting and because of uncertainty of events that were playing themselves out on the national basis. I decided I would initially discuss what had happened with people I felt I could trust. Later that day, I contacted Mr. Nhlanhla Nene and advised him that I had something serious to tell him. He was on his way to KZN, KwaZulu-Natal, so we agreed to meet on his return on Sunday, the 25th October.
You are also referring there to uncertainty of events that were playing themselves out on a national basis. What were you referring to?
It was probably the most turbulent time, which I deal with later. It was very turbulent time. And I'll give details later, if you allow me,
Yes,
Mr. Chair.
you may do that.
Upon landing in PE, I spoke telephonically to Mr. Hlongwane and expressed my disgust about what had transpired, particularly in respect of the manner in which he had deliberately misled me. I told him he should never again do what he had done to me or to any other person. He suggested that we should have a meeting to discuss what I had raised. On a Sunday, 25th October 2015, Mr. Nene contacted me and suggested we should meet the following day, Monday 26th October. I returned to Johannesburg on the Sunday, 25th October 2015 at approximately 4:37. I spoke to Mr. Godan, again, whom I trusted wholly, and asked if I could see him to seek his advice and guidance. I went to his house in Pretoria, and when I arrived, he was sitting with his wife. Given that his wife was present, I decided to provide him with a high-level outline of what happened. I told him that I had been invited to a meeting and that the individuals present at the meeting had told me that I would be made Minister of Finance and that they offered me money and that I had refused their offer. I was still deeply shocked, angered, and dispirited, and I told him that I thought I should submit my resignation. The following day, Mr. Gordon suggested that I should not resign at that time, but should wait until we have some time to consider the matter further and get into more details, and also to decide what would be in the best interest of the country. I told him that I would discuss the matter with Mr. Nene, which he said was important. We agreed to keep the matter confidential. I received 3 missed calls from Mr. Hlongwane and between 6:49 p.m. and 7:57 p.m. as well as one missed call from Mr. Duduzane at 8:18 p.m. On Monday,
Do you know the date? Are you able to place us in terms of the date?
I think it was on the 25th, I think, from 25th. I deal with on 38th, I think.
Yes.
On Monday, 26th, October.
Maybe here you might want to start first with paragraph 38.
At
and after
8:22 p.m. on 25th October 2015, I received a text from Mr. Duduzane Zuma in which he stated, "Good evening, sir. I tried to call you. Please return my call." On Monday, 26th October at 6:58 a.m., I sent Mr. Duduzane a text message stating, "Hi, bro, can we postpone today's session to Thursday? Did not realize how hectic my official schedule is, Jonas." I did not meet him again.
But do you know why he wanted to talk to you?
I assume that because I said they should give a list of what they do, maybe he was trying to arrange that.
Sorry, Mr. Jonas. This is important. You might not appreciate its importance. I think in that paragraph 38, or the one starting at 8:22 p.m.,
Yeah.
when you read the message from Mr. Duduzane Zuma, I think you just said, "Please return my call," and you left out "when you can." Or did you? I don't know if you swallowed that part of the sentence.
Yeah.
So it's important that if the quotation is written here the way it is, when you read it complete. Otherwise, it might create the impression that you are not agreeing that it was as is shown here, and that you are saying it was different. So I just want you to appreciate those things that might seem small.
Thank you very much,
Okay.
Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
The "please return my call when you can" was part of the code. On the morning of the 26th October 2015, I met and briefed Mr. Nene. We met on the balcony of my National Treasury office because we were concerned that our offices might be monitored. I told Mr. Nene exactly what had happened at Saxon World meeting, including that I had been told in clear terms that he was to be removed from office. He suggested that he should resign because he was going to be fired in any event. Having considered Mr. Gordon's advice, and in the face of the open hostility towards National Treasury in Cabinet, especially from the then President, and particularly in relation to the nuclear procurement program, I told him that I thought we should remain in our positions and fight on, if only to hold the line for the Finance Department. He agreed with my proposal in this regard.
We are now moving to deal with you with those events that occurred between October 2015 to December 2015. If you may please take us through those events.
At this point in time, I did not see any point in reporting the matter to either the police or the Hawks, as I believe that these institutions were seriously compromised, and I saw no reasonable prospect of this matter being properly and fairly investigated. This was both at a general level. By the then President Zuma had secured loyal intelligence and security apparatuses by weeding out most of the experience and technical capability in the various institutions. And at a personal level, given the threatening statements which had been made by Mr. Gupta during the course of the meeting, I anticipated that reporting the matter would simply result in reprisals against me. My concern in this regard were subsequently amply underscored by my later interaction with Major General Mnonopi in relation to the complaints which had been laid by David Mainir of the Democratic Alliance and Dennis Bloom of COPE.
And this interaction, you are dealing with it later in a statement.
I deal with it, Mr. Chair, later. My experience was also, to some extent, taken over. My experience was also, to some extent, taken over by national events, which subsumed Mr. Nene and me over the period leading to the firing of Mr. Nene as Minister of Finance. This time, in my experience, was one of the most intense periods in South Africa's democratic history. As we in National Treasury were trying to hold the line with presidential or cabinet support, without presidential and cabinet support, against an economy teetering on the edge of a recession, whilst various crises at state-owned enterprises unfolded. Can I just emphasize one point?
Yes, yes.
I think it's important to state that National Treasury's role is defined in the Constitution in part, Mr. Chair. But execution of that role largely depends on the Constitution in part, but also it depends on absolute support from the President. And I think in the Cabinet. Because some of the issues you deal with are regulatory issues, and you have to guide expenditure of departments, and sometimes you have to censure departments for irregular expenditure and many other things. So that's a very critical part. You also have to manage fiscus broadly to ensure, it escalating into a fiscal crisis. So both political and the legal constitutional framework are important for that. And what we were lacking at the time was the political part. Because the president was, it was clear that both the cabinet, the president, there was huge hostility towards the National Treasury in general.
Yes.
In retrospect, a number of these events appear to have been linked to the capture of various state institutions by the Gupta family. Simultaneously, the pressure on us from the former president and other members of cabinet to approve the nuclear deal was immense, and was ultimately the trigger of Mr. Nene's dismissal on the 9th December 2015, after he again refused to back the deal at a cabinet meeting on that day.
Do you know which deal? Do you still recall which deal was that he refused to back?
I'm saying the nuclear deal.
Oh, yes. The
nuclear deal in this period was a big issue, I must say. Just for everybody's understanding. It was a big issue, Mr. Chair. At the time, I recall that we were in and out of meetings, we were making presentations, and so on and so on. And that was the big pressure, and so on. We can deal with that later, maybe. I was on a flight to Port Elizabeth when Mr. Nene was removed from office. When I landed, I had a message from Mr. Nene and also received a separate message indicating that the president had attempted to contact me. Mr. Nene sent me a text message in which he said, I quote, that the X has fallen, and suggested that we should meet when I returned from the Eastern Cape. When I spoke to the then President Zuma, he told me that he had removed Mr. Nene as Minister of Finance, and that he had appointed Mr. Des van Rooyen. I asked him how he thought Mr. van Rooyen would be capable of performing the job and cope with the financial markets. The President Zuma responded by saying that I was there to help him. After the brief tenure of Mr. Des van Rooyen as Minister of Finance, Mr. Godin was appointed as Minister of Finance. I remained Deputy Minister of Finance. Yes. Shortly after Mr. Godin was appointed as Minister of Finance, we met and discussed various pressure points that the Treasury was facing, particularly how we would deal with the aftermath of the removal of Mr. Nene and the appointment of Mr. van Rooyen. And you remember that financial markets just plummeted at the time. And that probably was the immediate task to kind of pacify the markets and give certainty on policy direction and a whole range of those issues. We also discussed in detail, in this context, the events which had taken place at the Gupta residence on the 23rd of October 2015.
Yes. Now, when you say you discussed them, did you pave any way forward as to how you're going to deal with those, with that event that occurred on the 23rd of October 2015 at the Gupta's residence?
No, we just discussed it and said, listen, let's continue the fight. I think that's what we ended saying.
Now, can we move on to deal with the period between January 2016
Subsequently,
to March 2016?
thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Subsequently, in January 2016, I had a meeting with Dr. Mcebisi in Johannesburg, then the ANC Treasurer General, about another matter. During the course of this meeting, he said that he had heard a rumor about the Guptas offering me an inducement to take up the position of finance minister, and he asked me whether this was true. I told him what had occurred, and I also mentioned the role played by Mr. Hlongwane and Duduzane Zuma in facilitating the meeting. Dr. Mcebisi indicated that he was shocked, and he advised that he noted my concerns regarding the matter, including in respect the role played by the role of Duduzane Zuma. Subsequently, the Financial Times of London published an article on Wednesday, 8th March 2016, which reported, quote, I quote, the family also denied a claim made to the Financial Times that weeks before Mr. Van Rooyen's appointment, they had asked Mr. Mcebisi Jonas, Deputy Minister of Finance, if he was interested in the Treasury's top post at the meeting at the Gupta's home. I quote, there have been, I quote, continue with the quote, an extraordinary number of allegations around the Gupta family in recent weeks, several of which involved the finance ministry, a family spokesman says. I continue with the quote, to be absolutely clear, there was no meeting at all. The article did not immediately receive great attention in South Africa, although News 24 and some other online news sites reported the story on Thursday, 10th March 2016. On Friday, 11th March 2016, I traveled to a SADC meeting in Gaborone, Botswana, which lasted until Monday, the 14th, 2016. Whilst I was in Gaborone, on the Sunday, 13 March 2016, the Sunday Times carried a story which stated that, I quote, President Jacob Zuma's son, Duduzane, was present when members of the Gupta family offered Deputy Minister Mcebisi Jonas, then Finance Minister Nhlanhla's new job. The Sunday Times can reveal, unquote. I arrived back in South Africa on Monday, 14, 2016, and noticed that I had calls from Mr. Zizi Kodwa, then the spokesperson of the ANC. I went to Lutuli House to discuss the matter with him. He agreed that I should make a statement explaining what had happened. I released a statement on Wednesday, 16th March 2016. Before doing so, I discussed what was going to do with the Secretary General of the ANC, Mr. Gwede Mantashe, who himself supported my stance in this regard. For ease of reference, I have quoted the content of the statement below.
Yes. Mr. Jonas, for importance and centrality of the issues relevant to this commission, and with the indulgence from the chair, could you please read the contents of that media statement that you made into the record?
Media statement by Deputy Minister of Finance, Mr. Mcebisi Jonas, MP. I have decided to respond and clarify certain questions that have been in the public domain recently. I do so in accordance with my conscience, my political values, and the best traditions of my organization, the African National Congress, of which I have been a member since my early teens. I regard our constitution as being sacrosanct, and it embraces the values that South Africans struggled for and what we live by. I was appointed Deputy Minister in terms of Constitution by the President of the Republic of South Africa. Any practice that conflicts with the prescripts of the Constitution must be challenged in the interest of our democracy and the accountability we have to our people. The African National Congress that we have been and continue to be proud of members of has offered us opportunity to serve our country, an honor that I do not take for granted. My historical commitment to the liberation of our people has not waned. My daily decisions and actions are informed by understanding that true political freedom will be achieved through deliberate and active management of a transformed yet inclusive growing economy. The current economic climate presents many key risks for our country, which require responsible leadership to avoid full-blown crisis. We have to unite on the key issues relating to managing macroeconomic risk while urgently unlocking new resources of growth and jobs, all hands on the deck. The extent to which we are able to navigate the current macroeconomic challenges, restore investor confidence, and rapidly stimulate growth will depend on a heightened levels of political leadership. The narrative has grown around the issue of state capture. The narrative that has grown around the issue of state capture should be of concern to all responsible and caring South Africans, particularly those of us who have accepted the task to lead our people. We cannot afford to ignore the obvious impact these sentiments may have on our country and the resultant potential of undermining our moral authority. Neither can we afford to allow the attempts to capture the state to divert us from dealing with the challenges that our country faces. We have made our people, through our public pronouncement and private conduct. Therefore, let me state the facts on the matter of whether I was approached by non-governmental individuals in respect of the position of the Minister of Finance. Members of the Gupta family offered me the position of Minister of Finance to replace the then Minister Nene. I rejected this out of hand. The basis of my rejection of their offer is that it makes mockery of our hard-earned democracy, the trust of our people, and no one apart from the President of the Republic appoints ministers. Let me also place it on record that there was no discussion between the Deputy Secretary General of the ANC, Mcebisi, and myself on this matter. I have hesitated to speak out publicly on this matter until now, but I feel it is no longer possible to remain quiet. Of primary concern to me is that this issue has a real danger of diverting attention away from the real and urgent challenges we face. I'm committed to good governance, abiding by the constitution of our country, and being accountable to our people who repeatedly express their confidence and trust in us through election after election. It is this constant state of awareness and consciousness drummed into most of us throughout our service in the National Democratic Revolution, led by the ANC, that has provided us with the moral capital and tools to apply sound judgment, navigate challenges that emerge in the natural course of societal leadership. It is only through these values and moral covenants that I serve my organization, my fellow countrymen and women, and my beloved South Africa. Finally, I remain confident that the challenges that we face as a nation will be overcome if we collectively use our efforts for the benefit of all. I'm resolute in playing part in preserving the integrity of National Treasury as an institution in my capacity as Deputy Minister. I'm also committed to making my contribution towards building a prosperous South Africa led by our glorious movement, the African National Congress.
Yes, may I just finalize that?
Issued on behalf of Minister of Finance, date 16 March 2016.
Chairperson, I see that it's 11 o'clock.
Okay, we'll take the short adjournment for tea, and we'll be back at 11:15.
All rise.
Mr. Chair, we apologize for the delay. The admin staff was trying all their best to correct your file so that it must measure up to the chairperson standards.
Yes, no, that's fine. I don't know whether they had finished or not, but I didn't want us to delay longer than 5 minutes because I had said we would be back here at 15:15, and I didn't want us to delay too long because when we say we are going to be back at 15:15, we must be back at 15:15 unless we announce a further delay properly. So if they didn't finish, then they can use the lunch break to try and finish. Mr. Jonas, you are still under oath. I won't be reminding you each time we have had a break, but just do know that the oath you have taken will apply until you have finished your evidence.
Thank you.
Thank you. You may proceed, Mr. Mkwena.
Mr. Chair, Mr. Jonas, I'm going to request you to please, when you read the documents, read them slowly.
Okay.
And then please also when you give your clarities on any other issue, please do that slowly so that you can be able to follow your evidence. At some point, Mr. Jonas, you did interact with the Hawks. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Could you please share with us your interaction and the circumstances that led to you interacting with the Hawks?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A further article appeared in the Sunday Times on the 3rd April 2016, which reported that I had alleged that the Gupta family had offered me the position of Minister of Finance in the place of Mr. Nene in 2015. I was subsequently contacted by General Benning Ntlameza of the Directorate of Priority Crime Investigation, the Hawks, pursuant to a complaint which had been made by Mr. Bloom and Mr. Mainir. He asked me to provide a statement and said that we need a statement from you to help us finalize this case. He told me that they were working on a statement for me and that Major General Mnonopi would contact me in this regard.
Did you ask him at that stage what he meant by saying that to finalize the case?
I didn't at that point.
Okay, may proceed.
I was subsequently approached by Mr. Mnonopi, Major General Mnonopi, also of the Hawks. She initially phoned me on the 20th June 2016 and informed me that she was investigating the complaints which had been laid by Mr. Bloom and Mr. Mainir. The spelling of Mr. Mainir is wrong, if you allow me to.
Yes, could you please correct it? Should it be the same as the one in paragraph 52?
Yes, it should be Maynier.
Yes.
And she said that the complaints related to allegations of corruption and that the complainant, Mr. Mainir, referred to the Sunday Times article of the 3rd, 2016, and the complainant, Mr. Bloom, referred to my media statement. She said she was coming to see me at Treasury with a prepared statement. At that point, I called Mr. Mcebisi, my attorney, to ask him to be present at this meeting. Major General Mnonopi told us that this was I quote, a DA matter, unquote, and that I did not want to help the DA, and that they wanted to kill the case.
What is this matter that was referred to as a DA matter?
I assume the Mainir's complaint.
Yes.
She said that the statement had been settled by the advocate who was a prosecutor, I assumed within the National Prosecution Authority, who believed that it would kill the case. She said that she said to us that, when I say us, I mean to me and my lawyer, that we need your statement as a matter of formality. As there is no case, it is necessary in order for us to close the matter. Your statement must state that you are not a witness for anyone and that you do not want to make a statement as such. A copy of the draft statement which she brought with her is attached, marked Annex A.
Mr. Jonas, let me take you back to paragraph 54. When Major General Mnonopi said all these things, was she aware that she was saying them in front of your attorney, Mr. Mcebisi?
I was up front. When she came in, I introduced Mr. Mcebisi as my attorney. In addition to that, she apparently know Mr. Bukwana from the Eastern Cape. So there was no unclarity about Mr. Bukwana's presence in the meeting.
Yes. You had paragraph 55?
A copy of the draft statement, as I was saying, is which she brought with her, is attached, marked Annex A. And the draft statement contained the following paragraph. I quote, "During our engagement, she informed me that I am cited as a witness in both cases, and for that reason, a detailed statement is required from me. I responded to her that I am not prepared to submit a statement, as I never opened a case against anyone, and I do not intend opening any case. Further, I'm not a witness to any person. We, the investigating officer and myself, later made an agreement to meet as for such affidavit. Today I met with the investigating officer as arranged, and I still maintain my position that I do not have any statement in this regard. That is all I wish to say," unquote. And that was the statement we were asked to sign.
Before you proceed, in that paragraph you are referring to the Annex A. If you may please turn with me to page 122 of the bundle, Mr. Chair. Are you there?
Yeah.
Is this the statement that you were required to sign that was brought by General Mnonopi?
Yes, it is.
Now, it is important to record the contents of that statement because this statement, I take it, was not drafted by yourself or by your attorney. Am I correct?
Yes, it was.
You were simply meant to sign this statement.
Yes, I was.
And by signing it, it would have meant that you agreed to the contents of that statement.
Yes, indeed.
Now, could you share with the chairperson the contents of the statement which you were required to sign by General Mnonopi? If you can start from paragraph 3.
Paragraph 3, which is during our engagement.
Page 122.
Yes, okay. I, the undersigned, Mr.
I'm sorry, Mr. Mkwena. I'm struggling with my bundle here. As you know, it hasn't been arranged in a way that's going to make things easy. Just help me again where that statement is.
It's on page 122, Mr. Chair.
Well,
Yes. It's not.
there is the pagination that has been done with a marker. Is that the one I'm supposed
If
to
you
follow?
go towards the end of the bundle itself, Mr. Chair,
Yes.
and follow the pagination on the top right-hand corner of the page,
You see the pagination that has been done by a marker goes up to page 94, and after that, or no, 95, okay. It's just that for a number of pages, it was done on the right-hand corner.
is, yes,
But from a certain
the
point, they
pagination
do
on
it
the right-hand side is
they do
there.
it on the left-hand side, so that's confusing.
I thought it was corrected, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, no, not yet. You said 122.
122, and that will be on the top right-hand corner of the page.
Maybe the pagination was started by a right-handed person, and later on a left-handed person took over.
Yes. The old pagination reflects the pagination as at the court papers, Mr. Chair.
Oh, okay. No, I've got it. Thank you very
We
much.
apologize for that.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Jonas, as I've said that, I hope that you are having a correct pagination. You are on page 122.
I am.
Yes. Is that the statement which was brought by General Mlonopi,
Yeah, yes, it
which
is.
you were required to sign?
Yes, it is.
Can you please read on the record from paragraph 3 of the statement for us to appreciate what you were required to sign?
I wish to state that on 2016-06-20, I had a telephonic conversation with Major General Mlonopi of the Directorate of Priority Crime Investigation, who informed me that she is investigating 2 cases opened by one, Mr. Dennis Victor Bloom of the Congress of the People, and Mr. David John Menir, who is a member of the National Assembly of the Republic of South Africa. She further informed me that the allegations are of corruption emanating from Sunday Times article dated 13th April 2016, as cited by Menir, where the Gupta family offered me a position of Minister of Finance to replace the then Minister Nene, while Mr. Bloom made reference to the media briefing made on the 16th of March 2016 on the same subject matter. It proceeds during...
I'm sorry, Mr. Jonas, before you proceed. I see that in that paragraph, the article in the Sunday Times that is referred to is said to have been on the 13th of April 2016. I think in your statement, you may have referred to a Sunday Times article that appeared on the 3rd of April. Do you know whether...
I think
You are not sure?
we might settle the date. I
Yeah.
don't recall the date.
Okay, all right.
During our engagement, she informed me that I am cited as a witness in both cases, and for that reason, a detailed statement is required from me. I responded to her that I am not prepared to submit any statement, as I never opened any case against anyone, and I don't intend opening any. Further, I'm not a witness to any person. We, in brackets, the investigating officer and myself later made an agreement to meet for such an affidavit. Today I met with the investigating officer as arranged, and I still maintain my position that I don't have any statement in this regard. That is all I wish to say.
And this is the statement that you refuse to sign?
Yes.
Yes. Now, if you may go back to paragraph 54, you have referred, she also informed you that the statement was settled by an advocate. Was the identity of that advocate revealed to you?
It was, but I don't recall the name. It was an Afrikaan's name.
Okay. All right, you may proceed with your... Paragraph 56.
I refused to sign the prepared statement which she brought with her. I was at that point not surprised by the approach adopted by the Hawks, given the extent to which I believe the institution to be compromised. I did not accede to the request that I should not provide an affidavit. On the 19th July 2016, I provided the Hawks with a short affidavit confirming the content of the media statement which I had made on the 16th. And I must also state that in that affidavit, we also stated upfront that since the stated intention was to kill the case, we think that the media statement was enough probably to do that. And it was still part of our view that we could not continue to interact with them. The Directorate of Priority Crime Investigations, the Hawks, through Major General Menotti, then subsequently requested me to respond to certain specific questions on the 5th September 2016, followed up with an email on 20 September 2016. I accordingly provided a subsequent affidavit which was signed.
A supplementary, I think you meant to say
Supplementary,
Yes.
a supplementary affidavit, and contained the following statements. 5.7, the purpose of the offer was not communicated to me. 5.72, Mr. Ajay Gupta was present at the meeting, which was held on 23rd October. 5.7, the persons present at the meeting were Mr. Tutuzani Zuma and Mr. Fana Hlongwana. 5.7.4, as stated in the statement submitted to the media, the only person who spoke was Ajay Gupta. 5.75, there was no records of the meeting of which I am aware. 5.76, I was invited to the meeting by Mr. Tutuzani Zuma, and from there Mr. Tutuzani Zuma suggested a more quiet place, which transpired to be the Gupta residence, though I did not become aware of this until arriving at the premise. 5.77, I was contacted telephonically to arrange the meeting, and 5.78, the meeting was scheduled at Hyatt and moved to Gupta residence as stated.
Now, what you have just read into the record were the answers to the questions that were specifically asked by the Hawks.
Subsequent questions she asked.
You were also interviewed by the previous public protector, Advocate Thuli Madonsela. Do you recall that?
Yes, I do.
Yes. I will be referring you to certain portions of the transcript of your interview in order to confirm some of the aspects of your testimony. May I refer you to the bundle, page 25, Mr. Chair?
Yes, thank you. Is that the one at 21?
25.
25.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
The interview, Mr. Jonas, starts on page 21. Can you see that? And this is a transcript of your interview, which was held between yourself and the previous public protector.
Correct.
Yes. Now, I was referring you to page 25 with particular reference to line number 3, where if you ignore the first sentence, the second sentence, the public protector posed a question to you to say, the second question is the allegation that you had a meeting with the Gupta family. Did you have any meeting with the Gupta family? And if you turn to page 26, are you there?
I'm lost, actually.
Are you lost?
Yeah.
I don't want to lose you.
Well, I was lost too just until now because I thought
It's even worse if I
he was
lose. It's
reading
even worse
from
if I lose the
beginning.
chairperson. Let's go back to page 25.
I'm on page 25.
Let's go on the left-hand side.
Okay.
There is numbering. I was referring you to line 23, right at the
I've got
bottom of the page.
23 or 13.
Are you there?
Okay, maybe it's going to help. Maybe Mr. Jonas has got something similar to what I have.
Yeah.
You see, at page 25, at what appears to be page 25, on the top right-hand corner of the page, you have 25 written there with a marker.
Yes.
On
And
the
5.
left-hand side, 25, on the left-hand side,
Yeah,
there's
24.
something that seems to have been like page 26, but it's not very clear. Next to where 25 is written, you have got 5.
It's a typed page 5.
Typed, yeah.
Yes.
So, Mr. Jonas, do we have the same thing, you and I?
Yes, I do.
Okay. So is that where you are as
That's
well?
where
Mr.
I am, Chair.
Okay, all right.
Yes.
Thank you. And you were reading from the bottom of
And
page
the
25.
margins are on the left-hand side.
Okay. I've got you now.
Yeah, yeah.
Those are the folio
Yes,
numbers.
Yes.
And what I was referring to is folio number 23,
Okay.
line number 23.
Yeah.
Are you there, Mr. Jonas? Are
Yes,
you now
I
with me? And I have already read the question that was posed to you by the public protector. And you also, if you go to page 26, the next page,
Yes.
it's double-sided.
I can see.
On the top, what was your response?
Yes, I did.
Yes. Now, if I may refer you to the same page, page 26. Go to line number 12,
Yeah.
and the public protector poses a question to you, which for your benefit, I'll read to you. It says that, okay, we would appreciate it, say, who was present at that meeting? Then on line number 13 to 18, you answered. What was your answer?
I don't know the names of these guys, the Gupta guys, but I mean the meeting was arranged by Tutuzani Zuma, and after long messages and calls requesting to see me, so I eventually agreed to see him. We were supposed to meet. I thought it was a meeting with him on the message. When I arrived at the venue for our meeting, which was at Hyatt Hotel.
Now, you continue to answer that question on line number 23.
At Hyatt, he suggested that after almost like talking things that were not very clear, and I was getting irritated, I said, Chief, I'm rushing to the plane. So he said, no, there are other people that we have to meet, you have to meet. I said, where are they? He said, let's go. So we jumped into his car and we went to see to this compound somewhere in that area. It is in an area which, in that place, then I found Fana Hlongwane, and then it was Duduzane who, I don't know, I can't read. Who is this?
And the compound that you're referring to, which compound is that?
It's the Saxon World, the Gupta compound.
Yes. Now, the public protector, apparent from the transcript, did interview also in relation to what happened at the Gupta residence. And I'm referring also to the content of the conversation that took place at that place. May I refer you to page 29?
Okay.
And if you go to the bottom of the page from line number 18, are you there?
Yeah.
Could you please share with the chair what was your responses in that regard? Up until page 32. I'll tell you where to stop.
Okay. So we're busy chit-chatting. This guy came in and he was like, he just interrupted the discussion and started saying, we have been following you, we have been investigating you, we know everything about you, and so on, and so on. He told me that the old man seems to like me, and so on and so on. So we called you just to check you out. I mean...
And what was the reference to the old man? Who's the old man?
President Zuma.
Yes.
I mean, and so the old man had, and they talked a little bit about the ANC politics, critical with this person and that person. Then he kind of went further. You must understand that we are in control of everything. We are in control of NPA, we are in control of the Hawks, we are in control of National Intelligence Agency. So we are in full control, and the old man will do everything that we tell him to do. So I was actually a bit puzzled, taken aback, and he said, so the old man wants to make you Minister of Finance. So I said, unfortunately, I do not want to be Minister of Finance.
And thus far, this is what you have also related to the chairperson today.
Yes, I did.
Yes, proceed.
So he said, no, you have to be a Minister of Finance because we want that. And you would have to work with us. And if you work with us, you will be very rich. And we can immediately offer you 600 million. He pointed it to Duzani. He says, and then he said, he has a house in now. We built him a house in Dubai. He has already been there. The offer is safe. Whatever happens to you is safe. And it continues in that line. So he went on really in that kind of fashion. So I said to him, listen, I think I have to go, but let me just assure you, I'm not interested in working for you. And he kind of, it became a bit emotional. And I think at that point he said, listen, do you know whom you are dealing with? So I stood up, and at that point, so he followed me. Just as I took a few steps, he followed me, and everybody stood up. It was like, I must confess at that time, he was on the verge of punching me in the face. But I took a few steps, and then he says, and it struck me that let me go back, let me turn. I said, listen, by the way, what do you do? Maybe it is easy to work with you, but tell me what you do. So he said at the moment, and this guy sounded very stupid, I must say, because he said at the moment we have about 6 billion from Fiscus in different sources that we are getting from Fiscus, 6 billion rand. We want to push it to 8 billion, and we think you can be helpful in that regard. So I said, can I suggest something? I asked. I will come back only when I am not in a rush. Break it down. What exactly do you do? That would be nice to look at what you do so that I can make a proper decision. And he said, no. It is not, basically, it is not. You think it is illegal. He raised his voice. He said, you think it is illegal? Every that time we do in this everything we do in this country, I think it is legal. We create jobs, blah blah blah. He went on. So I stood up and walked. So he followed me and pushed everybody to sit, and then he said everybody must sit down. So he followed and dragged me into another. I thought it was a bar. He dragged into this bar. He says, do you have a bag? I can give you 600,000 now. So I said, listen, I don't want money. I don't want your money. I am leaving now, and I'm rushing for a plane. So let's talk when you are ready.
If I recall your evidence, you say that at that stage, Duduzane, Zuma, and Hlongwane, Efana Hlongwane, were in the vicinity where they were able to hear what you were saying.
They were hearing all of this. Because the guy was very boastful and loud, by the way. It was not a low voice. Tuesday, I'm coming back from the Eastern Cape on Sunday. We can meet on Tuesday so that you can give me an outline of exactly what exactly do you do. He said, okay. He calls Duduzane, now arrange that he comes back on Tuesday. Tell him to bring a bag. So I walked out and said, Duduzane, can you take me back to my guys? And so they gave me this, and they said, no. Duduzane is still basically in a meeting. They are still having a meeting. So I should jump into another car. So I left the place in that car, but I phoned Nene immediately, actually, after that. Hey, and I said, hey, I want to talk to you, man. There's something strange that happened. Unfortunately, Nene had left for KZN, so I said I will see you on Sunday. But we eventually met on Monday. So I gave him the account. I said, listen, Chief, these guys told me in no uncertain terms that we are going, and I just gave him a rough outline. Just to go back on Sunday, because I was thinking, let me test this thing with somebody, because in my mind I was still not resigning at the time. So I phoned Praveen. He was in at the time. So I said, please, can you quickly see me? So I went to see him. I just gave him a broad outline saying something happened, and in broad terms, this is it, and I'm thinking about just tomorrow submitting my resignation and move out of this thing. So he said, no, you can't do that. You can't do that. Let's just sit and wait and see what happens. So on Monday, he informed Nene about the incident, so on and so on, and he equally jumped and said, I want to resign. I said, no, you can't resign. Let's stick around and see these things go, how these things go. So that is in a nutshell, and I give you the dates. I can give you the dates. I think you can see there a couple of texts from Duduzane.
Yes, and that's what you informed the public protector at the time during your interview. May I also refer you to some of the portions of the transcript of your interview in order to clarify some aspects of your evidence as well and to confirm what you have shared with the chairperson today. May you please refer to page 41?
Yeah.
You'll see page 41, there is a typed page 21. Are you there?
Yeah.
Are you there, Mr. Jonas?
Did you say 41 or
41.
21?
No, 41.
41.
I was simply making it easy for him that there is
Yeah,
also
I'm
a
the-
typed page 21, a numbered typed page 21, but paginated 41.
I think it's it's the same, Mr. Jonas, arrangement like the page 25.
Yeah,
So,
I've got it.
yeah.
I've got it, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. But before you proceed, Mr. Mkwena, to the extent that the witness said before the former public protector what he has already told us, would there be any need for him to repeat? Shouldn't you only ask him if there is something to clarify? I saw that part of what, quite a substantial part of what he was reading earlier on is something that he had already told us in his statement.
Mr. Chair, one is simply anticipating what would happen in the future once it's taken through his statement today and what he has said before the public protector. But if we are comfortable that maybe those issues would not arise, one would not have to deal with those specific paragraphs.
No. It is important that if he has related this story or he has related to different people on different occasions what happened to him in regard to that meeting and what happened at that meeting, it is important that his attention be drawn to all of those occasions. But what I'm suggesting is that it might not be necessary for him to read again exactly the same thing. What you might wish to do is to let him confirm that, for example, the transcript
Yes.
relating to his
I understand.
interview with the public protector correctly reflects what he said before
Yes.
the public protector, save in the following respects, if those have been picked up,
Yes.
or you can pick them up and then ask him about those so that he can just clarify those.
That,
And-
that will short circuit his evidence. Mr.
yeah,
Chair.
thank you.
Mr. Jonas, if you can go to page 21, back to 21.
Page 21
Yeah.
of
The document starts
transcript.
from page 21. That is where your interview begins with the public protector,
Yeah.
and it goes up until page 89.
Yeah.
Did you have an opportunity to read that transcript?
Yes.
Does it accurately captures your interview with, I know that there are places where it says indistinct. We understand that there might be typing errors, but does it capture the essence of the interview between yourself?
Broadly, yes, sir. Broadly, yeah.
Yes.
Maybe because one knows what happens with these things. If Mr. Jonas hadn't had a chance to carefully go through that transcript and identify if there are areas that do not accurately reflect what he said, if he had not got that chance, maybe he should be given a chance to do so at some stage. That need not interrupt what we are doing. I'm just saying that because if cross-examination is allowed, he would be asked if there are discrepancies between what he has told this commission and what he may have told the public protector. So he needs to be given a chance to look at it very carefully and be able to say it is correct in the following respects, it is not correct in the following respects. But as I say, that need not derail what we are doing as long as he gets that chance at some stage.
Yes, Mr. Chair. He has already confirmed, subject to what Mr. Chair have indicated, that he'll be given that opportunity to deal with it comprehensively at some point. May I refer you to page 90, Mr. Jonas? 90. And if you go to page 93, you'll see that towards the middle of page 93, it's written there, Mcebisi Jonas, is this a document which you have prepared?
Yes,
What was the purpose of preparing this document?
it was meant to be a follow-up to the public protector's report, interview, basically to just outline the timelines and the facts.
Yes. And you'll see that when you look on, if I may refer you back to page 90, there are two cell phone numbers reflected therein to be belonging to Mr. Fana Hlongwane. Can you see them? And if you go towards the middle of the page, there is another cell phone number which is indicated to be the one of Mr. Duduzane Zumaki.
Yes.
We won't mention them into the record in order to respect their privacy. Are these the numbers which they used when they called you or when they SMS you,
Yes.
as you have referred to in a statement?
Yes, they are the numbers.
Yes. Now, in that document, you are dealing with the events. You are saying that before the meeting. For clarity's sake, which meeting are you referring to? If you go to page 90, it says before the meeting.
That is before the 23rd meeting.
23rd, which month? Which
October.
year? 2015 meeting.
Yes, it is.
Yes. And thereafter, if you go to page 91, you are saying it's reflected there in content of the meeting. Is it the same meeting of the
same meeting,
23rd?
23rd, yeah.
October 2015.
Yeah.
And you record there in what transpired at that meeting.
Yes.
Now, if you go to page 92, to avoid you having to read these documents again, I'm simply confirming what you did. And if you go to page 92, you have a heading also there that says post the meeting.
Yes.
This is the post the meeting which you have already testified before the chairperson in terms of your statement.
Yes.
Okay. And do you confirm also the contents?
Yes,
of
I
that
do.
term? Yes. Now, May I refer you to page 95 of the bundle, Mr. Chair? On the left-hand side, there are two numberings. The right-hand side numbering, Mr. Chair, we can ignore it. It was the pagination when the matter was before the High Court. So we will be now referring to the left-hand side pagination. Mr. Jonas, do you follow?
Yes, I do.
Yes. For those affidavits, Mr. Jonas, they run from page 95 and they go up until page 121. And simply to familiarize yourself with them, those were the affidavits which were filed in the High Court matter between the Minister of Finance against Oak Bay and other companies associated with the Gupta family. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Now, if you may turn to page 96, you will see that is the affidavit which was deposed to by Mr. A.J. Kumar Gupta. Are you there?
Yeah.
I need to traverse with you some of the issues arising from these court papers which bears relevance to this inquiry. Now, could you please turn to page 94, page 97, I beg yours. And page 97, could you please read paragraph 4 so as we can appreciate the context upon which these papers were filed?
It is a well-known fact.
Page 97, paragraph 4.
97. Before I deal with this mischievous allegation raised and presented by Mr. Kodan, I need to read
Page 97.
You are at paragraph 6 according to my
Yes.
bundle.
Paragraph 4.
4.
Yeah, paragraph 4.
Oh, okay. I have been informed by
Yes.
Ronika Rigavan, the acting CEO of Oak Bay Group of Companies, that Minister of Finance, Mr. Pravin Jamadas Kodan, thought it wise to refer to an alleged incident with his Deputy Finance Minister, Mcebisi Jonas, during October 2015.
Yes. Before I deal with your affidavit responding to these affidavits, I need to capture the essence of Mr. Gupta's allegations in these court papers. May I refer you to page 98?
Yeah.
And then could you please read paragraph 10?
It is a well-known fact that I record that I employed all reasonable efforts to be afforded an opportunity to address the then public protector, Advocate Thuli Madonsela, prior to the date of her issuing of her report. I further submit that it was on my instance and my request that the then public protector afforded me a single opportunity to address her on or about 4 October 2016. That opportunity so afforded was insufficient and clearly rushed.
Yes. Before we deal with your answers, can you also turn to page 98 and read in paragraph 11?
11.
99.
Advocate Madonsela undertook to furnish me with copies of evidence given by relevant witnesses. I was indeed furnished with a transcribed version of evidence of Mr. Mcebisi Jonas and his written statement regarding the alleged meeting at the house in Saxon Well.
Yes. So he's raising the issues that we are conversing for the purpose of this inquiry. Now, can you go on the same page to paragraph 14 and read the same into the record?
Let me commence this portion of my affidavit by clearly and unambiguously state under oath, I have never met Mcebisi Jonas, not as alleged or at all.
Yes, and the next page.
The fact of the matter is that Mr. Jonas, with respect, blatantly dishonest when he suggests that he met with me or that I attended a meeting with him.
Now, thus far, that captures the gist of,
Yeah.
or the essence of the allegations by Mr. Gupta and how he's dealing with those allegations pertaining to the meeting of the 23rd October 2015. May I refer you to page 103? And let's deal with paragraph 27.
In order to support that, I have said herein I have approached Mr. Duduzane Zuma to depose the confirmatory affidavit with regards to the involvement in the meeting conducted by Mr. Jonas, with Mr. Jonas. Through his attorney, Mr. Christo Stockenstrom, I contacted Mr. Fanahlonga to depose a confirmatory affidavit regarding my involvement on the meeting. I append here to as annexures AG1 and AG2. The said affidavits to which the Honorable Court is kindly referred.
Now, in that paragraph, Mr. Gupta places reliance on the confirmatory affidavit of Mr. Hlongwane and Mr. Duduzane Zuma. Am I correct?
Yes.
Before we deal with those confirmatory affidavits, could you please again remind us the date of the meeting at the Saxon World?
It was the 23rd of October in 2015.
Yes. Now, could you please turn to page 106? It goes up until 107. That is the confirmatory affidavit of Mr. Fanahlongwane in support of the affidavit of Mr. Gupta as referred to in the paragraphs that I've dealt with you. Do you recall?
Yeah.
Yes. Now, please read paragraph 3 and 4 into the record.
I have read the affidavit deposed to Mr. Ajay Kumar Gupta and confirm the contents thereof, in as far as it refers to any acts or conducts which I have been involved in, and confirm the correctness thereof. Paragraph 4. Further to the aforesaid, I confirm that Mr. Ajay Kumar Gupta was not present at any time during the meeting with Mr. Jonas held on the 25th October 2017.
Now, that confirmatory affidavit refers to the 25th October 2017. Did you hold any meeting with Mr. Hlongwane
No, I didn't.
on the 25th October 2017? May I refer you to page 109? Are you there?
Yes, I am.
That is the confirmatory affidavit of Mr. Duduzane Zuma. If you turn to page 110, Mr. Chairperson, paragraph 3 and 4, Mr. Jonas, do you agree that they are identical to that one of Mr. Hlongwane?
They are identical, yes.
Fundamentally, paragraph 4 also refers to a meeting with Jonas held on the 25th October 2017. And you have already testified that you have never referred to any meeting of the 25th October 2017.
Yes, it is correct.
Now, may I refer you to page 112?
I'm sorry, Mr. Mokoena, before you move to another page. Paragraph 3 of the affidavit of Mr. Duduzane Zuma, and I think paragraph 3 of Mr. Fanahlongwane's affidavit, they also both seem to be identical. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yes. Now, paragraph 3 of those two affidavits, in each one of them says they have read the affidavit deposed to by Mr. Ajay Kumar Gupta and confirm the contents thereof, and I quote, insofar as it refers to any acts or conduct which I have been involved in, and confirm the correctness thereof. You may or may not be able to say this, but do you understand what they say they are confirming there, having regard to the contents of Mr. Gupta's affidavit? Does it make sense?
It doesn't. It doesn't.
Because I didn't pick up, I may be mistaken, anything that Mr. Gupta says in his affidavit they did. Maybe I've misread, but they are saying in paragraph 3, what they are confirming is the contents of his affidavit, quote, in as far as it refers to any acts or conduct which I have been involved in.
Yes.
Okay, I don't know what at some stage in the life of this commission you might wish to make of that, but I just, my eye caught that.
Yes. You'd recall, Mr. Chair, that in an introduction to this question, we referred to the context upon which these affidavits were made,
Yeah.
and more importantly, emphasize the meeting and the offer which was made at Saxon Well.
Yes.
Now, Mr. Hlongwane and Mr. Duduzane Zuma seem to be confirming a date that does not support what is sought to be supported by Mr. Gupta in his affidavit. That's the essence. But it will become much more clearer because we are now going to the specific answers proffered by Mr. Jonas in relation to those confirmatory affidavits and the allegations in question.
Thank you.
May I refer you to page 112, Mr. Jonas, in order to clarify the issues for the chair. Are you there?
I'm there, yes.
And then that document goes up until page 121. If you can go to page 121. Remember, the numbering, it's on the left-hand side this time, not the right-hand side.
Yeah.
And is that your signature?
Yes.
And is this the affidavit that you filed in response to the affidavit of Mr.
It
A.J.
is.
Gupta?
It is.
Yes. Now, may I refer you to page 113? If you may read for the chair paragraph 3 and skip paragraph 4 and read paragraph 5.
I have been referred to affidavits sought to be filed by the Oak Bay respondents, purportedly as fourth set of affidavits. I understand that these follow not only the closing of affidavit, but also the heads of argument filed on behalf of the Minister and the Reserve Bank, and the bank cited as further respondents. The affidavits purport to deal with the minister's replying affidavit and the report on state capture by public protector. The latter was published over 10 weeks ago, but after the founding affidavit was filed.
Now let's go to paragraph 5.
Now, in the Oak Bay respondents' purported fourth set of affidavit, Mr. Ajay Gupta criticizes the public protector report for accepting my version, or to use the words Mr. Ajay himself chose in the fourth set of affidavits, for having latched onto my version, paragraph 17. What Mr. Gupta does not disclose, however, let alone address, is that the public protector's report records evidence which contradicts Mr. Gupta's version. See paragraphs 5.24 and 5.25 of the report attached. marked MJ1. Mr. Gupta purported affidavit does not deny or explain this, nor did he do so in his previous affidavit filed together with the OGBE's main answering affidavit. Yet Mr. Gupta now not only seeks to imply that the public protector was wrong, but also seeks to call me blatantly dishonest in paragraph 15.
Yes. You also dealt with the confirmatory affidavits which were filed by Mr. Hlongwane and Mr. Duduzane Zuma. May I refer you to page 116?
Yeah.
Starting from paragraph 12 to page 1118, paragraph 16, that will clarify some of the questions that the chair were seeking clarity upon.
Mr. Gupta does not suggest that the incident to which he refers involving me was created by the applicant or me. It was not created by either of us. The incident certainly did occur. This is confirmed by the confirmatory affidavit to Mr. Gupta's own affidavit, deposed by the two individuals who scheduled the meeting and took me to the Gupta residence. Both confirmatory affidavits confirm explicitly that the meeting indeed occurred. All that they seek to do is to confirm that Mr. Ajay Gupta was not present during the 25th October 2017. I refer in this respect to paragraph 4 of the identical confirmatory affidavit. Apart from confirming absence of Mr. Ajay Gupta, they only confirm the contents of Mr. Gupta's affidavit in as far as it refers to any acts conducted which
Or conduct.
Conducts which I could have been involved in paragraph 3. The confirmatory affidavits do not suggest that any other member of the Gupta family was absent from the meeting. This is significant because the public protector report itself refers variously to Gupta brother in attendance, Atul in paragraph 27, paragraph 26, paragraph 30, paragraph 26, attached mark MJ2, and Ajay amongst others in paragraph page 5, paragraph 4, attached mark MJ3. I did not previously encounter either of these two brothers. I'm only able to identify them from photos and footage in media. My own statement attached to some of these of the bank affidavits, which, as mentioned, the Ogbay respondents elected not to address, only to refer to members of the Gupta family. See e.g. record volume 2, page 173, paragraph 6. Therefore, even where Mr. Ajay Gupta's allegation, which merely seek to absent himself from the meeting, but without explaining why the meeting was held at the Gupta residence or suggesting that he was unaware that it would be held there or authorized that the Gupta residence be used for this purpose. To be truthful, which I deny, then the primary fact regarding the members of the Gupta family remains a common cause. Shall I continue?
Yes, please.
The correct facts regarding Mr. Ajay Gupta himself is, in short, as follows. Met him at Saxon World residence on 23rd October 2015 together with Messieurs Duduzane Zuma and Hlongwane. Mr. Gupta indicated to me I understood clearly the Gupta family and its interest had been gathering intelligence on me, including those close to me. They were aware of my activity and connections with senior members of the African National Congress. They were going to make me Minister of Finance collectively as a family. They make a lot of money from the state. That they intend to increase that to about 8 billion, from 8 billion rand, from 6 billion rand currently. And that the bulk of their money is stashed in Dubai. They have determined that the National Treasury is a stumbling block to their ambitions of making money from the South African government. They have made Mr. Duduzane a billionaire, including a house he has in Dubai. Mr. Gupta is offering me 600 million rand to be deposited in an account of my choice. And if I had a bag that could carry 600 million, then I could get
600,000.
600,000, sorry.
Rands.
Then I could get that amount there and then.
Yes, and you also dealt with paragraph 27 of the Gupta's affidavit. May I refer you to page 120?
Yeah.
And the last paragraph, paragraph 26.
This paragraph refers to the confirmatory affidavit of Messrs. Duduzane, Zuma, and Hlongwane. They have been approached, Mr. Gupta states, to confirm his involvement at the meeting in October 2015. In turn, these affidavits state that Mr. Ajay Kumar Gupta was not present at any time during the meeting with Mr. Jonas held on the 25th October 2017. Paragraph 4 of both confirmatory affidavits, both identical in terms and both deposed at Table Bay Harbor. Even if one is to understand the reference to be to 25th October 2015 instead of 2017, then the confirmatory affidavits remain materially defective. This is because, as I have stated on end, as I have stated, and the Public Protector report records, the relevant meeting occurred on the 23rd October 2015. Therefore, the absence of Mr. Ajay Gupta at a meeting 2 days later in October 2015 fails to confirm the necessary allegation. In any event, as indicated above, as would be fully apparent to all three deponents, the key issue is that the meeting with the events I have described took place at Sasonwell compound, shared by the Gupta brothers and their families, and that a Gupta brother was present.
Yes. Now, I want to take you back to your evidence that you adduced before the chairperson earlier on, and I'm testing that against the fact that, South Africa is a democratic constitutional state. If you may turn back to your statement in paragraph 2, you referred to the removals and appointments of certain officials, including yourself. What I want to know from you, is there any protocol that has to be observed, pertaining to the appointments of members of cabinet?
Yes, there is. I mean, in the normal course, the normal process is a consultative process between the ruling, upon winning the elections, of course, Mr. Chair. There's a consultative process between the ruling party leadership and the president of the ruling party, and therefore the president of the country, around who are the individuals who would be deployed in government. And out of that process, normally you would get probably whatever number or list and names, but then ultimately the responsibility lies with the president, and he will choose from that. And under normal circumstances, the president will inform the individuals appointed and their positions. In the case of dismissal, normally the same procedure happens. I mean, it's you have to be, normally you are, whether it's a phone call sometimes, and whether you're called to be told, but there is some courtesy accorded to the persons appointed.
And you are now referring to what is expected, or under normal circumstances?
I'm saying under normal circumstances.
That's what should happen.
Process, yeah.
Yes. And also, can you share with us whether is there any protocol in the announcement of the, appointments?
Really, I don't think that there is a strict protocol, except that normally the announcement is made after the individuals would be knowing that they are not making it, or they are making it into. So it's normally not a surprise. Yes. That's the whole point I'm trying to make.
Now let's deal with the removals. Is there any protocol in relation to the removal? It's the same thing.
It's the same phenomenon. Courtesy, public courtesy prevails, that you have to be informed that you are no longer in that position. You're being removed before the announcement is made.
I'm asking these questions against the background whereby either the removals or the appointments would usually happen at midnight or at 2 o'clock. The question is whether, from your own experience, do you know if in relation to the ones that you have referred to in paragraph 2, whether such protocol was observed?
No, I mean, look, I mean, probably in terms of appointments they were, but in the dismissals, my recollection is that probably Minister Nene was accorded the opportunity of being told after a cabinet meeting. But my recollection is that Minister Godan and myself were never informed. So we, in the midnight, in the comfort of our beds, probably we were woken up by telephone calls saying, watch TV.
Yes. Now, may I refer you to paragraph, if I'm not mistaken, it's paragraph 43. Of your statement. In fact, I need a paragraph where you are referring to the turbulence period in our country. You did not really specify to the chairperson what you meant by that. What was the country experiencing at the time? What was that? Paragraph 45, I'm indebted to my learned colleague. Paragraph 45. You are saying that shortly after Mr. Goran was appointed as minister, we met and discussed the various pressure points that the treasurer was facing, particularly how we would deal with the aftermath of the removal of Mr. Nene and the appointment of Mr. Van Rooyen. We also discussed in detail in this context the events which had taken place at the Gupta residence. But I just want you to expand more as to what the country was experiencing at the time.
Look, I mean, in the first instance, I think the big issue was clearly the removal of Minister Nene itself had dealt a blow to the credibility of South Africa and the state.
And what was the response of the market to
the markets tumbled? The markets tumbled. We lost billions of rands as a country, and in fact, the economy and the business confidence in the country tumbled.
What was the performance of the rand at the time?
It probably tumbled itself, and I mean, it increased. I mean, the rand weakened quite substantially, and a whole range of things, I mean, happened after that. I mean, low confidence normally leads to low investment, and.
Yes, and what was the effects, you know, I mean, that such a conduct had on the credit ratings of South Africa?
It really dashed them actually badly. I mean, we were probably in the worst state since the dawn of democracy, as it were, in that period, as it were. But also, more importantly, I think it also created a downward path for the country economically from that period. I mean, I don't think we've since recovered, quite frankly, from that.
And how did this, you know, also, you know, affect the ability of, you know, South Africa to borrow on capital markets?
It had a negative effect on across the board. I mean, in financial markets.
Now,
and I think what also aggravated it is that some of the factors that led to Nene's firing, which is the nuclear deal, which was a big issue, because essentially from where we're sitting as Treasury, we felt that South Africa could just not afford, I mean, the nuclear deal as it was structured. But secondly, also, there was also, I think, a moral, ethical question about public finance, whether what kind of debt can you raise for future generations? And is it justifiable? Is it ethical? And from our view, we thought that it was also not justifiable or ethical to actually raise that amount of debt for South Africa.
And how did these, events play themselves out within the Treasury Department itself? What was the morale of the staff of the Treasury when these things were happening?
I mean,
And the
really,
functionings of Treasury.
it really knocked the morale quite substantially. I think were it not for probably the enthusiasm of the Minister Kodan, we could have probably been in a worse situation, I think, in that case. But also, I think the functionality of the Ministry of Finance was seriously affected in the sense that, I mean, in that period, Mr. Chair, it was a period where it was clear, I mean, you didn't have to guess that confidence in the Minister of Finance was lost. And the Ministry of Finance was increasingly isolated in government business.
May I refer you to page 14 of the bundle, just to also clarify some of the issues. Page 14.
Lost it, My bundle seems to have collapsed now, erupted. Yeah,
Don't collapse now, Mr. Jonas. We still need
I'm sorry, what page did you say, Mr. Mkwena?
1-4 of the bundle, Mr. Chair.
Oh, okay.
There is only one numbering, I hope, on that page. As it will typed.
Yeah, I think what may have happened with Mr. Jonas' bundle is what may arise from how the papers or pages have been put together. It may well be that it might be more convenient if it was maybe a small lever arch file
Yes.
where it would be easy to page through without papers coming out of the bundle.
We take note of that, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Are you there, Mr. Jonas?
page 14.
Yeah, 1-4. 1-4.
I'm there.
14. Are you there?
40.
Yeah. No, 1-4, not 4-0.
I'm there.
You recall that when you testified, you informed the chairperson that you were made an offer on the 23rd of October 2015. You recall that?
Yes, I do.
Now, we know also from your evidence that the first time that you made a media or you released a media statement was around the 16th March 2016. And the question is that, why did it take you such a long time before you went public with the offers? And asking that against, your constitutional obligations, at least to deal with these things squarely.
Look, in the first instance, I think I stated earlier on that my confidence in in some of the criminal justice system was very low at the time. I mean, and it's probably hasn't improved much, I must say, but it was very low at the time. It was completely low. I mean, I've been in government. I've seen cases being given, charges being sent, and nothing happening, and so on, so on, so on. So I was very clear that what you have, was a criminal justice system that was in a crisis, actually. The second problem was that I think, I remember that at the end of the day, we were operating in a political environment, so I had to kind of think, about the tensions and the dynamics that were there, and so on and so on, and try to ensure that I do not find myself being compromised. To be honest, if you record the way the reaction to the statement actually still confirms that actually it was a time when the whole sway politically was in favor of state capture and corruption, actually, at a political level. But thirdly, I think we in that course, we consulted lawyers, by the way, to actually ask them whether is there pressure to do this now at the particular point immediately, or whether we should kind of let the ride and eventually see. And we got legal opinion to say there was no real obligation in terms of time when we do it. And remember that also there was a reality of possibility of reprisals around this thing. Yes. So we are vulnerable.
Now, may I refer you to page 134 of the bundle?
Sure.
Whenever I'm referring you to page numbers, I become nervous that we might not be on the same page.
No, I've got it.
You'll see that page 134, that document goes up until page 137.
137.
Is that your cell phone record, Mr. Jonas?
Where is that now?
Page 134.
34.
Is that document starts from 134 to 137. I'm seeing that is that document your telephone record, your cell phone record.
I think it's the last document in the
Oh,
bundle.
yeah, yes, it is. It is.
It is.
Yes.
Now, you will recall that there are certain numbers which we have identified to be the ones belonging to Mr. Hlongwane and the one also belonging to Mr. Duduzane Zuma, you recall?
Yes, I do.
In relation, with reference to page 90,
Yeah.
which was your timeline document.
Yes.
I don't want to go through the laborious way of dealing with this thing. If you go to those pages, you'll see that we've taken the liberty through you, as we are guided by you, that certain numbers were marked, and there are markings in blue and there are markings in orange. Can you see that?
Yes, I do.
The numbers in relation to that are marked in blue, would those be the ones of Mr. Hlongwane?
Yes.
The ones that are marked in orange, would those be the ones of Mr. Duduzane Zuma?
Yes, it is.
Yes. And they appear throughout these 4 pages that you have annexed to the bundle.
Yes.
Yes. Mr. Chair, Mr. Trengroff has indicated that there might be some clarification questions that he wants to pose. We also intend to address the chair in not closing the evidence of this witness. We'll explain the reasons why. May this be an opportune time to offer Mr. Trengroff that opportunity. You're fine. Mr. Chair.
Well, if Mr. Trengroff wishes to put some questions to the witness, he would have to apply. Number one. Number two, I'm open to persuasion, but I would be disinclined to allow witness counsel to just put clarificatory questions. As I say, that's my inclination, and I'm open to persuasion. I would think that probably clarificatory questions could be passed on to counsel for the Commission's legal team to put through. But as I say, I'm open to persuasion on the matter, and maybe during the lunch break there might be a way to discuss the matter among between the Commission's legal team and Mr. Trengov. Let me also say that the Democratic Alliance had requested that they be allowed to, as they put it, participate in the proceedings of this commission. And when they were asked exactly what they meant by participating in these proceedings, one of the things they said was that they wanted an opportunity or a permission to examine witnesses who came before the commission to give evidence. I made a decision which I believe was made public and distributed, where I said that I didn't think that the grounds which they advanced conferred upon them the right to be able to examine witnesses who came before the commission. Of course, the ground that they advanced was that they had been one of the complainants who had lodged complaints with the public protector, and basically that complaint that they had lodged had not been, its investigation had not been finalized and would be would continue to be investigated by this commission. That, of course, is not the same ground on which Mr. Trengov, if he seeks to put certain questions to the witness, would be advancing. It would be a different ground. But I'm mentioning these things to just let Mr. Trengov and everyone concerned, one, about a decision that was made, two, about the facts, about what my inclination is, three, about the fact that I am open to persuasion, but it's much better, I know, as counsel, when you know what the judge's thinking might be. So my suggestion would be that during the lunch break, maybe some discussion as may be necessary would be taken, and then maybe when we resume, we can take it from there.
Chair, if I may, just for clarification's sake.
Yes, yes.
My client has been so thoroughly led that I don't have any further questions to ask.
Oh, well, Mr. Trengov, after that statement by you, I think that really other counsel will realize that the legal team of the commission is doing a good job. Thank you very much. We are grateful to you, Mr. Trengov, for your cooperation.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, that leaves us with one aspect, and that is the issue pertaining to whether or not to close the evidence in chief of this witness. We would want to make submissions. Either we do them now or we can do them after lunch.
We are on my watch. We are at 9 minutes to 1. One, we want to use every time that we have to do the work that we have, we are called upon to do. But two, it might not make, in certain circumstances, much sense to try and use 10 minutes if you are going into a new issue. So I'm quite happy to let you decide whether you want to deal with that now or whether we should take an early lunch break and then continue after lunch.
We would prefer to adjourn at this stage, Mr. Chair, in order to see also whether did I canvass all other issues.
Okay, no, thank you very much. Mr. Jonas, we are going to adjourn and return here at 2 o'clock. So we'll adjourn the proceedings until 2 o'clock. Thank you.
Please rise.